All the characters in this narrative are over 18 years old. It's a fact, my mother is a brilliant physician, something I've witnessed firsthand. I've enjoyed robust health thanks to her diligent care and exceptional medical expertise. What's more, Mom is a surgeon, a rarity in a field predominantly occupied by men. It's truly remarkable that such a delicate woman, with a cascade of rich auburn hair and captivating hazel eyes, isn't a celebrity or supermodel. Appearances, however, can be misleading. Whenever I praised her surgical prowess, my mother would respond with a wistful smile, "There was an even more gifted healer, your father." Perhaps she's right. My father, a dedicated member of Médecins Sans Frontières, perished shortly after my birth while mitigating the devastation of a catastrophic earthquake in the Andes. We were left to navigate life's challenges together, often struggling financially, yet our bond remained strong. One afternoon, a young student was admitted to my mother's unit, suffering from grave injuries sustained in a traffic collision. She carried no identification. The attending physician, after a cursory examination, declared her case hopeless. But Mom insisted on intervening. "All right, go ahead," he replied apathetically, and departed for the day. Mom labored tirelessly throughout the night, achieving the seemingly impossible. The girl survived. The following morning, it was revealed that the patient was the daughter of an immensely affluent businessman. She had eluded her security detail, slipped away from school, and embarked on a joyride with companions. When she was finally located, my mother was at home, recuperating after her shift. The attending physician, to his credit, recounted the events accurately, and soon my mother's bank account swelled with an amount that seemed astronomical to us, a token of gratitude from the relieved father. Our long-held dream was finally within reach. Mom purchased a downtown condominium, a charming cottage in a secluded community, and a reliable vehicle. Little did we know what peculiar circumstances awaited us in this idyllic enclave. I'd always held a certain perception of the elite, gleaned primarily from humorous anecdotes, but the reality far surpassed any expectation. As the saying goes, every joke contains a kernel of truth. Our neighbors proved to be, for the most part, a collection of pretentious, vapid individuals whose substantial wealth seemed to fuel their irrationality. We resolved to keep our distance, to put it succinctly. However, my ever-gracious mother consistently strived to maintain amicable relations, and one particularly foolish young woman managed to penetrate her defenses. Considerably younger than my mother, this woman endured a philandering husband. When her spouse attempted to confront her about her behavior, she sought refuge with us. Her husband, a prominent figure whose pronouncements on television frequently betrayed his ignorance, possessed an ego that dwarfed his stature. By this time, I was quite aware of the unfolding drama and had cautioned my mother against becoming entangled in their marital woes. She acknowledged my concerns, yet the saga persisted, culminating in a day I'll never forget. It was late August. Following Mom's successful treatment of the influential businessman's daughter, she became the subject of considerable deference. The department head, ever attuned to the prevailing winds, had granted my mother her preferred vacation time during the summer for the past 2 years. We were enjoying this time at our new cottage. The weather had been glorious for the entire previous week, filled with swimming and sunbathing. After a recent thunderstorm brought a welcome drop in temperature, we realized our garden required attention. The black currants, so cherished by my mother, were ripe and beginning to fall from their branches. Immediate harvesting was necessary. My mother, whose hands were as delicate as a concert pianist's, always protected them by donning thin yet resilient surgical gloves for gardening tasks. My love and admiration for my mother, particularly for her hands and her overall being, has been unwavering. We've always shared a unique connection. I was eternally thankful that after my father's passing, there was no one else to divide her attention. She bestowed upon me all her unreserved affection. We had a small, private ritual. We almost always slept together, and this particular night was no different. I cherished these moments of togetherness, particularly during our berry-picking expeditions, when we'd engage in intimate conversations. Therefore, I was less than pleased by the interruption of our neighbor. He trespassed from his side of the fence, carelessly trampling the shrubs, and I immediately recognized his customary state of inebriation. "Hey, Doc, hiding my stray dog again?" the neighbor slurred, addressing my mother with undue familiarity. She often remarked that a physician's duty extends beyond the confines of the hospital, and despite her reservations about our neighbors, everyone in the community recognized her medical expertise and knew they could seek her assistance at any hour. For this reason, we always kept a well-stocked emergency kit and a set of sterilized surgical instruments at the ready. His presumptuous manner invariably irritated me, but my mother responded placatingly, "Listen, I've warned you repeatedly that this drinking will have dire consequences. Your liver is already severely compromised, and there's no transplant center nearby." The man belched loudly, mumbled something unintelligible, and staggered back towards his house. "What a creep," I commented to Mom as he retreated. The currants were located in the farthest corner of the garden. Engrossed in our task amidst the bushes, our view of the gate was obstructed, and we failed to notice the neighbor's return. The gate, as always, was unlocked. After all, the community had security. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the air, followed by a shower of leaves from a nearby bush. I whirled around in astonishment and froze. The neighbor stood on the path, a smoking firearm clutched in his hand. Dropping the basket, I seized my mother's hand and pulled her toward the house. We reached the steps just as a second shot rang out. Mom cried out in pain and collapsed. A crimson stain bloomed rapidly on her white sundress. With a surge of adrenaline, I lifted her, dragged her into the foyer, slammed the door shut, and bolted it. Almost immediately, the door shuddered from a powerful impact. The butt of the gun, I surmised. In moments of crisis, thought processes accelerate. The door was flimsy. It was installed merely for show. It opened inward and wouldn't hold for long. The hallway was narrow, offering no escape. He would corner us like trapped animals. A hammer lay on the side table. I grasped it in my right hand, and with my left, I fumbled with the lock between the blows. The door burst open. The intruder stumbled onto the carpet beside my mother and received a blow to the back of his head. He lay still for a moment, then began to rise, using the firearm for support, and shrieked in terror. I lunged at him, striking wildly with all my strength. I don't recall how many times I hit him. Many. Then Mom stirred, crying, "Stop! Stop it!" She grabbed my arm. She leaned over him, then straightened abruptly, her expression filled with horror. "It's over. There's nothing more to be done." I quickly slammed and locked the door. "Mom, what are you saying? Let him rot. Now lie down and I'll call for help. You're hurt." "Are you insane? Call for help? They'll notify the authorities, and that will be the end of us. He tried to kill us. He was intoxicated. I acted in self-defense. We'll be fine." "Oh, sweetheart," my mother sighed sadly. "If only it were that simple. We can't involve the authorities or medical services. I'll handle this myself, alone." "But how can you? I'll help you. Now, come on." Mom leaned heavily on my arm, and we went to her bedroom. I noticed her pallor and the way she bit her lip. "Are you in a lot of pain?" I asked anxiously. "Yes, quite a bit," she replied through gritted teeth, "which is why we need to address that immediately." I guided her to the sofa, where she carefully positioned herself on her stomach. "But I can't do anything," I exclaimed fearfully. "You don't have to," Mom reassured me. "Just follow my instructions. Gently lift my dress." It was a lightweight white sundress. As carefully as possible, I gathered the fabric and pulled it down. I stared, dumbfounded. "So the dream came true, but under such tragic circumstances," Mom said. "Quickly fetch the antiseptic spray and apply it to the wound." Summer inevitably brought minor scrapes and cuts, so Mom always kept this medication on hand. Now she needed it herself. I was very familiar with the spray. It offered antiseptic, hemostatic, and analgesic properties, and it had a pleasant aroma. As soon as I'd liberally coated the wound, color returned to Mom's cheeks, and I realized she was feeling better. The pain had subsided. "Excellent, dear," she said. "Now, it's crucial to determine what he shot us with. You understand firearms." I rushed to the hallway and cautiously retrieved the weapon from beneath the deceased intruder. "It's a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun." I unloaded it. 3 cartridges remained. Inside a translucent plastic casing were several large, gleaming metallic spheres. "It's buckshot," I reported, hurrying back to the room. "Mom, it's buckshot. What's the diameter?" Likely 9 millimeters, similar to a pistol round, Mom deduced. So we'll proceed accordingly. I shuddered, but quickly regained my composure. What do I need to do? Get my medical bag, Mom instructed. It was a foldable orange bag, identical to those used by paramedics. We kept one in the cottage and another in the car. I quickly located it and returned. Place it here, Mom directed. Open it. Now go wash your hands thoroughly. I followed her instructions precisely and returned, slightly unnerved by the impending task. Good, Mom commended. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Come here, let's begin. Take the antiseptic spray and apply it to your hands. Good. Now put on the gloves. Excellent. Take a sterile gauze pad and dab the wound. As I did so, I observed that the wound wasn't as deep as I'd feared, no more than a centimeter. And there, embedded within, a gleaming sphere was clearly visible. It must have struck Mom at an angle, ricocheting off the railing. My fear lessened considerably. Mom, I can see the pellet, I said. Very good. Now take 2 forceps. Use one to widen the wound as much as possible, and with the other try to grasp the pellet. Carefully now. I inserted the first forceps and gently expanded the wound, then quickly grasped the pellet with the second forceps and extracted it. Well done. Everything's perfect, Mom encouraged. Now take the antibiotic powder, open the packet, and apply it liberally to the wound, like this. Did you empty the entire packet? Use another one. Good. Now open the surgical tape and secure the dressing. Excellent, Mom said, clearly relieved by the successful procedure. I felt calmer too. See, she remarked with a smile, every cloud has a silver lining. You finally got to admire me. You've desired this for quite some time, haven't you? Yes, I have, I admitted honestly, but not under these circumstances. Well, circumstances aside, Mom continued, and made a suggestive gesture. Take your time. There's no rush. Words failed me. My throat constricted. After a few more involuntary movements, I climaxed. I struggled to my feet, trembling, and lay down beside her. Mom, my darling, thank you, I whispered, catching my breath. Suddenly, a series of bangs echoed from the neighboring property. I flinched, then realized it was fireworks. They were always celebrating something over there. Perfect timing, darling, Mom smiled. Perhaps the gunshots will be mistaken for fireworks. Now, let's attend to the other matter at hand. We made love. Afterward, Mom retrieved the shotgun and returned, a perplexed expression on her face. Where should we put this? It's so long, it won't fit anywhere. I have an idea, I responded. Let me try. Okay, that's it, it's done. I detached the stock, and the shotgun fit neatly into the trunk, alongside its former owner. Within half an hour, Mom and I were driving through the security gate. Mom tried to conceal her discomfort, but I knew how difficult this drive must be for her. A familiar guard peered into the car. You're leaving at a bad time. The radio predicts the weather will improve tomorrow. We'll be back, Mom replied cheerfully. We're just transporting our berries. She gestured toward the back seat, where baskets covered with cheesecloth emitted a delicate aroma. The guard nodded knowingly. He hailed from a nearby village and understood the intricacies of gardening. Finally, Mom exhaled as we reached the highway. She knew the area intimately, having spent her childhood summers at a rented cottage in a neighboring village. There's a turnoff onto a back road just ahead, a very secluded spot, Mom continued. There used to be an old, abandoned, but very deep well there, precisely what we need. Having disposed of the neighbor and all the evidence, we drove to the city, stopping first at her clinic. There, the matter of her wound was finally resolved. I waited in the car for about 30 minutes, then Mom emerged, wearing a contented smile. All patched up, she announced, good as new. Then we went to visit my father's younger sister, my aunt. She seemed surprised by our arrival. Although she and my mother had never quarreled, they rarely interacted. It just happened that way. But the baskets of fragrant berries spoke volumes, and my aunt expressed her gratitude warmly. My 2 charming young cousins immediately captivated me. While Mom and my aunt chatted in the kitchen, my cousins showed me their toys and books. After the harrowing events of the day, it was incredibly soothing to hear their sweet, high-pitched voices and to play with them. We spent the night at our city apartment, but exhaustion overwhelmed us, and we collapsed into bed. The next morning, I cautiously switched on the television. Well, I suppose the top story will be the disappearance of a prominent local figure, I thought. But no, there was nothing. We returned to the cottage, but everything remained quiet there as well. The neighbor wasn't reported missing until 3 days later, when his wife finally deigned to return home. However, she hadn't gone far, having apparently been cavorting with a lover in the village. Consequently, the most uncomfortable questions were directed at her, which seemed entirely justified, given her role in initiating the entire debacle. The power outage caused by the thunderstorm, which disabled the regional surveillance system, proved to be our saving grace. Mom calmly stated that she hadn't seen or heard anything, and the matter was dropped. It ended, as these things often do, with no resolution. The neighbor's wife was paraded across countless television programs where she wept copiously, surrounded by a gaggle of equally hysterical friends, and gradually the story faded from public consciousness. It was an undeniably horrific ordeal, but it ultimately strengthened the bond between my mother and me. As the saying goes, every cloud has a silver lining. Thanks to Mom's wisdom, we now recall that day not as the most terrifying of our lives, but as the most transformative. My mother had always hoped I'd follow in her footsteps, and that first successful operation profoundly influenced my decision. I'm currently studying surgery at a university. My mother and I have long since become citizens of another country, and I feel safe sharing our story here.